What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another college related video. So this is a video I've been wanting to make since I finished up my sophomore year a few months ago, but I wanted to wait until this next school season was about to start. So I've come up with a list of 10 things that helped me to make an A in Organic Chemistry 1 and 2. I just want to say that these are the tips that work for me. Everybody's different, so some of these may not work for you, and every professor and every school is different. So these are the things that I did that resulted in me making an A, but just make sure you kind of discover what works for you as well and don't just follow what I did. So I know if you're watching this, you're probably interested in numbers. So before I get into the tips, I do want to mention that I made a 92% in Organic Chemistry 1 and a 95% in Organic Chemistry 2. So I'm a biology major, and I think Organic Chemistry was the top class that I was most scared to take. I've just heard so many horror stories about it, and I really thought going into it that I was going to fail it, but I didn't. Okay, so tip number 1 is probably the most important thing, and it encompasses the rest of the tips, which is spending about 10 to 14 hours a week on organic. Tip number 2 is always going to your professor's office hours if you have any questions. I started doing this in General Chemistry 1. I've created great connections with my General Chemistry 1 and 2 teacher, my Organic 1 teacher, and my Organic 2 teacher because I would spend so much time in their office hours. Anytime I was studying outside of class or taking notes outside of class or doing practice problems, I would always have little sticky notes next to me, and anytime a question popped up in my head, I would write it down on the sticky note and put it on the area of the paper where I had a question. And then the next time they had an office hour, I would go in there and just flip through my pages and ask them all the questions, and that helped me out a ton. So definitely don't be afraid to go to your professor's office hours because you can form a great connection with them, and they're going to see how much work you're putting into their class. And then later on, if you're applying to graduate school, med school, dental school, anything you could be applying to, if you did form a good connection with them, you could go back to them for letters of recommendation or anything like that. Okay, so tip number 3 is taking detailed notes from your textbook. This all kind of depends on how your professor teaches. So I had to do this a bunch in Organic Chemistry 1, but in Organic 2, my professor taught straight from the book. So for each chapter, I probably spent 4 to 6 hours taking detailed notes to put in my notebook. Even though I pretty much just copied everything down straight from the book, it still kind of ingrained it into my memory. I could spend 30 minutes reading the entire chapter and probably not retain anything, or I could spend hours writing everything down and really trying to understand what the book is teaching me. This was very time consuming, but I feel like I gained so much from doing it, so I would recommend doing that unless your professor teaches directly from the book. Tip number 4, going along with tip number 3, is doing practice problems. So I don't have my textbook with me, but I just had a normal big organic chemistry textbook, and then I rented the solutions manual with it. I think the manual was like $50 or $60 to rent for the semester, but it was definitely worth it because there were some people in my class that they would have to text other people or go to the professor to know if they did the practice problems right. So if your school does offer a solutions manual along with your textbook, I would recommend getting it because it would show you exactly how to do the problem, and it would explain why certain answers were right and certain answers were wrong. There was anywhere from like 40 to 60 practice problems per chapter, and I did the majority of them, and that is where a lot of my questions would come from. I wouldn't really just have questions based on my notes, but once I was doing problems, if I didn't understand why I was getting it wrong, I would just put a sticky note on it like I said, go to my professor, and they'd explain it super quick. So just taking book notes and doing the practice problems probably took up 8 to 10 hours of the 14 hours I would spend a week on organic chemistry. Tip number 5 is making note cards for your structures, your functional groups, your reactions, things like that. I always learn really well based off note cards, but it is different than like a normal biology class. So usually in biology classes I can make note cards for everything, but with organic chemistry, a lot of stuff there isn't really much to make a note card about. But I did get these big note cards. I usually use 3x5 for most classes, but for organic chemistry I used 4x6. Here is a big stack of reactions for chapters 7 through 11. I made this huge stack at the beginning of Organic Chemistry 1, and it just shows all the different structures of a bunch of different things, and then a big stack of all the functional groups. You want to start learning those as soon as possible. The 6th thing that I always had with me when I was going through those note cards is a whiteboard. Whenever you're studying functional groups or reactions or something, you can't really like read dihydroxylation and just kind of like do it in your head, if you understand what I'm saying. So I would always have a whiteboard with me, and I would read whatever functional group or whatever reaction was on one side of the note card. I would draw it out on the whiteboard, and then I would flip it over and see if I was right. And if there was ever an instance where I was studying somewhere without my whiteboard, I would just do that on notebook paper. The 7th thing was right before an exam, I would always make a condensed sheet of paper that I'm just calling an exam guide. So I would take like the biggest topics of the exam and write them out on printer paper, like in cute colors and stuff. A lot of the things that I would put on these exam guides were things that I didn't really make note cards out of, but they were really important concepts that I needed to know before the exam. And then I would just have these in a folder with me, and I'd just flip through them the night before and the day of the exam. Tip number 8 is having a model kit. So this was required to buy for my class, and it just came in a bag that was really hard to get what you need out of it. So I went to Walmart and I went to the fishing section, and I found this little box, and I organized all the pieces into this box. Organic chemistry is a lot of visual learning. There were people in my class that could do chair conformations and isomers, and I'm forgetting the rest of it, in their head, and I could just never do that. So having a model kit to actually build out the molecules that you're working with helps a ton. We could also bring these kits to the exams if we wanted to. I would recommend learning how to use everything before an exam, because the first time I messed with it, it took me like 10 minutes to build one molecule, but once you get used to all the different pieces, it gets pretty easy. So if you do have a hard time imagining like 3D shapes in your head, I would recommend getting one of these model kits. And if your school isn't making you get it for organic chemistry and isn't selling it to you, they probably have these on Amazon or somewhere where you can buy them online. Tip number 9 is just to use the internet to your advantage. So if you don't understand a concept while you're studying for an exam or doing homework, make sure to look it up on YouTube or Khan Academy or any other websites that you can find, and you will most likely find a video that will help you out. And tip number 10, the last one I have for you guys, is just to make a friend in your organic chemistry class. My best friend and roommate is a biology major as well, so we would always study for these exams together. A lot of the times we would teach each other concepts, even if the other one already knew it. We would just take turns teaching each other things, because it can really help you to remember things. So we would just get the whiteboard out, get all our notes out, and teach each other concepts, and we would also quiz each other. So I remember for one of our organic chemistry 2 tests, we would go back and forth between drawing reactions on the whiteboard and making the other one complete it. So we might put a reagent and the final products, and the other one has to draw the beginning products, or reverse, or like at the beginning of organic chemistry 1, we would draw resonance structures and have the other one move the electrons around and things like that. So try to make a friend in your organic chemistry class that you can study with together, because it is a very difficult class. You want to have somebody that you can go through it with. So those are my 10 tips on how I made A's in organic chemistry 1 and 2. I really hope this was helpful, and maybe some of the tips will help you out in your organic chemistry class. Please give this video a thumbs up if you learned anything from it, and subscribe for future college videos, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.